Want to hear why I joined Epic Realty? I got to tell you, I had no plans to change companies. I received an email from an acquaintance inviting me to a webinar that was going to start in 5 minutes. And 10 minutes into watching this thing, I knew I was in trouble. I was a little rattled because I knew I was going to be switching brokers. And if you want to hear my story, then you're in the right place. Let's chat. Hi, I'm Mike Cerrone with The Curious Agent. And if you're curious about joining Epic Realty and you want to chat with me to learn a little bit more about it, then go ahead and click the link in the show notes below. There's a link titled Talk to Mike. And go ahead and click that, and you're going to go over to my schedule, and you're going to schedule a 20-minute Zoom call with me where we can just chat and see what your situation is and see if this is a good fit or not. We'll just kind of give you the straight scoop. But let's go ahead now and jump back into the story. So to understand why I switched to Epic Realty, let me tell you a little bit of story, a little bit of background. Inflation has been driving up the costs. I know you've probably been feeling that. And so I personally needed a little more supplemental income with all these rising costs. Again, I don't know if that's affected you, but it certainly started affecting me and my family. So in addition, I'm now in my mid 50s and I'm getting much closer to retirement. I'm within a decade, and that's making my eyes open up a lot different than it did when I was 20. And so now I fear maybe not having enough money to be able to retire. I'm not sure if that has affected you in that way, but I assume someday you're going to probably feel that. Well, I start to feel it. So I start to kind of deal with this by looking around and trying to think if there were better models out there. And I start to recall that, wait a minute, my parents pulled this off, right? And they had a model. And I'm just going to tell you this story real quick, and we're going to get back into real estate. But I watched my parents pull it off. I looked at my dad's model and basically what he did, and he kind of was describing it to me when he was trying to wrap it up, and I was maybe a teenager. And he described it to me as a three legs to a stool, a stool, and his goal was to have three sources of retirement income. One, he was going to have Social Security, which we all get if we pay into it. Two, he was going to have a military retirement because he was pretty smart. He was active for 4 years, and then he stayed in and he did reserves for 20 years. So he gets a pension, or received a pension from the military. And then third, he worked for the government. And so he worked for the city, and he got a pension there after working for him for 30 years. It was the reason he stuck it out and worked hard and made things happen with that one entity. Pretty smart in the long run, because after he retired, and he retired relatively young at 60, he lived for another 20 plus years and got this retirement income for the entire time and lived well compared to other people that were trying to do the same thing. So it was a really good model. My father passed. My mom is still here. And now my mom is receiving those same income streams. So it really set them both up. It set up my father and my mother, which was really smart. And so I looked at that model going, man, I think I made some errors. But that was a really smart plan. And so I start to look back at my reality and what did I do? I kind of went a different route. I went the entrepreneurial route. And so I've been in real estate for 30 years. I've started and stopped multiple companies. I've made some small fortunes and I've lost some small fortunes. I've gone the whole tide. I did put away for Social Security, luckily, so I'm going to have some Social Security income coming in, but as you probably know, it's small, but it'll be there. I was not in the military, should have followed my father's footsteps, but I didn't. So I'm not going to receive any military pension. So now I've only got one source of income. And after 3 decades of real estate, no one offered me a pension. Did anyone offer you a pension? I think I would have put into that plan, but there wasn't one there. Now, what I did do is I did put some money into a personal IRA, sold some rental properties. But I do fear that it's not going to be enough. Those sources of income just aren't going to quite cut it, especially with all the inflation happening. So after I felt bad about my situation, I start to look around and say, hey, is there any way that I can kind of create another income stream like my father did? I realized I didn't have 30 years to go work for another company like he did to get a pension, but is there some way that I could put in some time and create an income stream that'll get me through retirement and my wife as well? So I started to look at that, and this thing popped out at me quite a bit ago, about 6 years ago, when I was just starting to feel this way. It was back in 2018. And a friend told me about a new brokerage that was coming out, and they offered a thing called revenue share. And it was different than profit share. It was going to be money off the top and not off the bottom. So it's going to be a consistent income stream. It offered this great way to get a highly leveraged income with a low time investment. It looked really promising, right? And so at the time, this company was small, had about 2,400 agents across maybe 26 states. They were just starting to expand out, and they wanted to go nationally. And I looked at the model and I reviewed it, and I said, yeah, it's got some potential, but boy, it looks like it's young, and it might have some pitfalls that may not pull this together. I'm not sure I want to invest the time in it. And so I decided to pass. And that was a pretty big mistake in retrospect, because that company did well and it kept growing, and I kept hearing about it. And every once in a while I look back at it. And so about 2021, so 2021, excuse me, 2021, I looked at and I said, wow, this actually is a pretty cool company. I think I want to be part of it. Now, by then, they'd already grown to 40,000 agents, and it already had the massive growth over those last prior 3 years that I wasn't involved. And I think that might have been an error, but we'll come back to that. So not only that, when I got in, I don't know if you're in one of these companies, but I had a slow start. I knew it was there, but I didn't really know if it was going to work, and I didn't really know how to do it. And so I kind of inched into it, and I didn't get super serious about it for probably a year and a half or 2 years. And by then, the company had already grown again. It was already at 60,000. And then I finally started to attract some agents and some really cool people that I got to work with, which is awesome. But I wasn't experiencing this rapid growth that some of the early people I knew had gotten in early had. And so within a few more years, the company was already at 80,000 agents. And again, most people had heard of the opportunity, and the competition now was fierce. Most people had heard about the brokerage, and it was really hard to start up a conversation about it. Now, again, I had known some people who got in early. They made small fortunes. I was very happy and proud for them. But because I was dragging my feet, I missed the opportunity, I think. There's probably still a way I could etch something out, and I started to do that, but it was really slow, and it felt like I was just hammering away at a stone wall. And so I decided, okay, I'll stick it out. It's a great company. I like the people. They've built something really awesome, but it's already mature at this point. And then opportunity just kind of knocked, and it's weird how opportunity comes out of nowhere. You're not even expecting it. I'll tell you what happened for me. I saw an email from an acquaintance, and I only spoke to this person a couple times by email. I don't even think, maybe we have, but I don't remember even talking on the phone. I'd seen him on a Zoom call, but it wasn't like we were talking or anything. But I'd seen them at like a presentation. Nice person. But that was about the extent of it. And this person had reached out by email to me and mentioned that there was this new brokerage. It was young and growing fast, and it had some cool dynamics to it. And I just took a quick glance at the email, and I was about to delete it. And then I read in there, it said, revenue share with no FLQAs. And if you know what that means, great. That means you're in this kind of world. If you're not, I'll explain that real fast. FLQAs is a frontline qualified agent, which means that there are restrictions on how you can receive the revenue share based on your people. Anyway, I'm going into a lot of detail. I'm going to show you in a second what I mean. I'll be clear. But just know that it was restricted, and they were basically opening up and removing all the restrictions. It just caught my eye. And I'm like, well, I got to see what they're talking about. So this fella's sponsor was about to do a webinar in 5 minutes. It just was a fluke that I opened it up, and 5 minutes later, they were going to start a webinar. And I was doing some admin work, and I was thinking about listening to some music in the background. I'm like, well, I'll just put this thing on in the background, just kind of listen to it. I was very happy at my brokerage. I had no plans on moving or doing anything different. I was just going, plugging away, trying to build my little part of the company. But again, I decided to listen to the background, and it just drew me right in. It was like, oof, just pulled me right into the screen. And within about 10 minutes, just about 10 minutes, it was an hour presentation, but within 10 minutes, I was rattled. I was a little bit shooken up. I'm like, man, this is not good. I'm going to have to switch brokers. And I don't want to switch brokers, but this opportunity is too big. So I stepped back, and I like to jump into things, but I thought, you know what, I better do some due diligence, and I to talk to a bunch of people. I did research. I got advice from a lot of folks, and within 2 weeks, man, I was in. I just jumped right in. And so here's why. Let me show you some more information. Let me explain what revenue share is, and then you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. So if you haven't heard about revenue share is a reward for introducing an agent into a company. It's basically a little thank you that comes from the company to you for helping them grow. And in this case, Epic Realty, they're going to pay out sponsors. Sponsors are the people that bring in somebody. So they have a sponsor and a recruit. And so the sponsor brings somebody in, an agent in who ends up joining the company. And each time that recruit has a closing, right up to the time that they cap, then the sponsor receives a little fee, a little thank you every time there's a closing up to the cap. And then for the rest of the year, there's no more fees. By the way, this thank you fee, this revenue share is coming from the company and not from the agent. That's important to remember. It's coming from the company. The company collects their money, and then they take part of it and share it with the sponsor, which is pretty awesome. But the agent's not paying any extra for this. Now, in addition to that, it gets even better. The company says, well, check this out, not only for the people that you bring in directly, but anybody that your people bring in, you can also receive a little thank you fee for as well, because they wouldn't have come in if it wasn't for you bringing in the first person. So you bring in Sally, and Sally brings in Harry. When Harry has a closing, you get paid as well. All right. And that goes 5 levels deep that you're going to get paid here at Epic. And you would receive money from that little bit of the pre-cap closings for each of not only the agents on what we call your front line, but all the way down for 5 lines. So hopefully that was clear. I'm going to show you an example in a second. And at Epic, again, there's no FLQA requirements. Okay. There's no buffer reductions. Very few people even know what I'm talking about, but there's no buffer reductions. That's basically a clawback of the money. There's no access fees. Some companies charge you a fee to even receive your money. At Epic, they don't do any of that. And so you're always going to get paid your full amount on all 5 levels, everything you're entitled to right off the bat without any hurdles and obstructions and challenges. So I was like, wow, this is really an incredible opportunity if what I'm hearing is true. That's why I had to go check it out and make sure, and turned out it was true. And then the way that they do it, the way they calculate it is also simplified. There's a lot of crazy formulas elsewhere. This one is just, the company is going to pay 10% of the cap out to the sponsor each closing until that person caps. So the cap fee, the company's split is cut up into 10 parts, and the 5 sponsors above receive 10% each, and then the company receives the remaining 50% to operate the company. And so that's why it's sustainable. People ask, how is this thing sustainable? Well, that's why. And so that's what they do there. And it's the same on all 5 lines. You get the 10% of the cap on all 5 lines. It's a super simple formula. Now, the sponsors can earn up to about $1,500 per year per capping agent. So an agent that's performing, you're going to receive up to about $1,500. I say that because there's all these other factors that play in, but believe me, it's all the money you were expecting. They just have some cool features, like they have a thing called declining cap. So the longer you're with the company, the less the company takes in the cap. And so then therefore the less they're going to pay out in rev share. That's what I'm talking about. And you're going to get this money on all 5 levels, which again is pretty amazing. So in addition, one last thing, the revenue share is willable. So if I were to build something up and then I got hit by a truck or caught some crazy disease or whatever, and I'm gone, then I can will my revenue share to someone else, to my wife or to my kids or to a family member or whatever, charity, whatever you want to do, you can will it to someone, which is pretty cool. I think you can will it to a charity. I don't know if it has to be a human person. I'll have to check that out with the company, but I know I can give it to my kids and family. All right. I want to show you a quick example to help drive this point home. I think this is going to help you. So just give me 1 second to set it up. Okay, so I'm going to just show this a quick revenue share example so you might understand what I'm talking about. And then keep in mind, this is an estimate. This is just a best case scenario. These results are not guaranteed. In fact, just assume you're not going to get this full benefit because of all the other factors. But I have to show you something because everybody else is showing their best case scenario so that you can kind of see how this thing would play out, right? So check it out. So let's say that you go out and you join, somebody joins Epic. Let's say you join Epic. Let's say I join Epic, okay? And I'm there and over time, I meet people and other agents and they say, hey, I saw you join Epic. You say, yeah. And they say, hey, how's it going over there? I say, it's fantastic. And they say, well, could I come over there and join you? You're like, sure, come on over. I'll tell you all about it and we'll see if it works for you. And out of however many people you talk to, 4 decide to join. All right, let's just assume that's what's going on and they name you as the sponsor, right? So what happens then is on your first line, you'd have 4 people. Now, let's go on and throw one more factor in. Each of those 4 people, they go out and they talk to just one friend each who also joins. And that just goes down until all your lines are filled in. So we're going to keep this super simple. So your line 1 are the 4 people that you talked to and you brought in, and then each of them is going to bring somebody in. So now you got 4 people on line 4 that you didn't bring in, but your recruits did. And then those people are going to also just invite one person each that comes in. So you got another 4 people now on your line 3. And then those people are going to talk to at least one agent and bring somebody in. And so now your line 4 also has 4 people that were brought in from the people on line 3. And then finally on line 5, you got 4 agents that came in, and they came in because they were brought in by one person above. And so you get the idea that you brought in 4, but then from that, you didn't do any more work, but all these other people came in, another 16 people popped up. And so in total, you got 20 agents now in what we call your downline. And you are able to receive compensation from those folks because you are the reason they all end up joining either directly or indirectly. Make sense? Okay. So now we look at this, and if all these people cap, all these agents cap, they make the necessary amount to cap, the result is pretty cool. You would receive up to $30,000 per year in revenue share. How did we get there? We took the 20 agents times that maximum amount of $1,500 per agent per year. So that's 30 grand. Remember, this is a best case scenario. That's pretty exciting, right? I mean, this money is just coming in as a thank you each and every year that all those people are there and they continue to produce and you're there. So it's pretty cool. And then at Epic, you get paid, again, on all 5 levels. So you get paid on all 20 agents. This is important because it's not true elsewhere. And in fact, at my old brokerage, which, by the way, was an amazing company, really, really proud of them and was grateful to be part of that. But they did have some things that were different. And one of the things they did was that you would only get paid in their scenario on the top line, the first 4. You would not have received any money. Well, you'd actually, in their scenario, you receive a little itty bitty teeny weeny amount on lines 2, 3, 4, and 5. What they would do is they give you this little, we calculated, and I could be wrong, but I think it was around 1/20th or about 5% of what you would receive in a full scenario. What I mean by a full scenario is that they had a lot of different rules. And one of the rules was you had to have a certain number of people on your line 1 before you could receive revenue from your line 2. So you'd have to have 5 people on your line 1 to receive revenue from your line 2. And then you'd have to have 10 people on your line one to receive revenue on your line three. And you have to have 15 people on your line one in order to receive any revenue from line four. And you'd have to have 20 people all on line one to receive any money on level five. But not only the 20 people, they'd all have to be a thing called a qualifying agent. So they added another requirement. And the qualifying agent is an agent that had to close X amount or receive X amount of revenue or generate X amount of revenue into the company in a 6-month rolling period. And that actually sounds really easy when they tell you, but it's hard for agents to do that because of the seasonality of the business and everything else. So what ends up happening is you don't end up getting paid on all your levels all the time. And it becomes very frustrating for agents who are trying to build out this source of revenue, and becomes unpredictable as well. So that was a challenge that was happening there. It became a bit difficult because that the total number you had to have on line one, they called those FLAs, frontline agents. And then they added the second element, which is qualified agents. Not only a certain number of agents, but they all had to be qualified, or a certain number had to be qualified, which really threw the numbers off. In other words, for this example, you would only get paid on line one. You would not receive all the rest. And so it'd be less. And at Epic, they're like, look, we're opening them all up at the beginning. There's no restrictions. So you get paid on all 5 levels immediately for all, in this case, all 20 agents. And there's no FLQA requirement, and there's no buffer, which again, we haven't talked about, but buffer is when the company actually pulls back some of that money. You don't receive it, which is also frustrating because it's a magic formula that you really don't understand how it's getting calculated. But you end up with the result of not receiving the money. So those were some frustrations with another company, and with several of the others that I'm aware of, I think. I know at least with the one I was at. Anyway, I just want to give you an example of why this thing is so cool. If you haven't experienced it yourself, I hope that helps. So needless to say, I made the switch. I switched and joined Epic. Now, Epic is this young, growing company. It's full of a lot of entrepreneurial energy, which I really enjoy because I personally have started 11 different companies. I love the entrepreneurial energy. And so I think this is a massive opportunity. I didn't jump into the opportunity I saw before. I didn't jump in early enough, and I felt bad about it. And I didn't want to make that same mistake. So even though it's early, I decided I'm going to take some risks. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Now, when I joined Epic, Epic had about 2,000 agents. And the crazy part was that just about 4 months or so before that, they were only at 500 agents. So they went from 500 to 2,000 agents in like 4 some months. And that's a factor of 4. That's huge. They are right in the growth stage. They've got their systems dialed enough that they're expanding and growing fast. I'm like, this is the time to pop in. And you may decide the same thing. So to me, this is a first adopter's dream, right? Somebody getting in early. Now, I'm not at the very, very beginning, but I'm pretty early in the stages of the growth cycle. And so I also know, I just want to warn everybody, and I'm aware there are going to be growing pains. These kind of companies, man, they have growing pains. You'll hear stories of some of the companies are now big, and the old days that they had a problem with this and the problem with that, and onboarding took, they wanted to do it in a day and it was taking 3 days or a week or some crazy thing, or you went to get your closing and you had your closing, but then they didn't get your part of the commission check back to you immediately. It might have even taken a day or 2 or 3, and that was frustrating. There are going to be these weird growing pains. You contact the company to get something, and you're hoping to get it in 3 minutes, and instead they take 3 hours, and it's frustrating. There's going to be stuff like that. I just know that going in, and you should know that going in too. What I'm looking at, though, is can I handle that knowing that this thing is, I believe it's on a rocket ship. Maybe it crashes and burns. I don't know. But I believe it's going to go on a rocket ship, and I want to just grab on and hold on tight and deal with all the turbulence because it's going to go, whoa, who knows where, to some exciting place. All right. So that's why I'm saying it's kind of this first adapter's dream, and it may be this bumpy ride, but I think it's going to be worth it. I'm also confident that I can build a supplemental income stream for today. I mean, you're catching me as I'm making the transition, okay? So I believe that I'm going to be able to make a supplemental income stream for today, as well as a retirement income for the future, for tomorrow. So I'm pretty excited about that. And by the way, we haven't even talked about all the amazing things they have for productive agents. Agents are out there in the field selling every day. They've got some amazing tools and perks, and we're going to go into that in another video. I don't have enough time today. I've already wasted enough time of your time, but they're good. We're going into all those details later because that takes a whole nother video. It's so many. And I haven't mentioned the other dream of mine and the other desire of mine, which is to mentor and help the agents that I sponsor. I don't have it. There's no requirement from the company for me to help them, but I feel obligated and want to help them and mentor them along. So there are agents in all different levels that I'm bringing in, from new agents to newer agents to strong solo agents to teams, young teams, big teams, epic, huge monster teams. And I've got a little bit of experience in all those fields. I was lucky enough to sell 113 homes in 1 year, so I can kind of show them along and help them through a lot of their trials and tribulations, and I enjoy that stuff. And so that's something else that is kind of cool for me with this model, is I get to invest in the people that decide to join with me and go on this journey. So that's kind of cool too. We'll expand on that all later. But I wanted to give you that. That's another little piece of this. So let me just tell you this. I did, in fact, of course, switch to Epic Realty, which I'm real excited about. And if you're curious about, if you're just thinking about and you're curious about maybe joining Epic Realty or getting more information, and you want to chat with me about to learn a little bit more, go ahead and click down in the show notes. I think I'm going to call it Talk to Mike or something like that. You'll see it down there. Just go ahead and click that link and schedule a 20-minute Zoom call with me. We'll go ahead and get on the call. We'll chat, and I'll explain the model and what's going on in more detail. And we'll find out if it's a good fit for you or not in your particular situation. I'll give you a straight scoop. I don't mind telling people I don't think this is right for you right now. If it's not, or saying, boy, this looks really good, or it's somewhere in the middle and you're going to have to make a choice and flip a coin or something. But I'll give you that information. Now, if this video was helpful, do me a favor and click that like button. It helps the channel. It helps other people see what we're doing. And if you really like what this is and you want to hear more, because we're going to be putting out a lot more content on this topic and these topics, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and join me on my epic journey. All right, well, this is a lot of fun today. Keep moving forward, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.